Unbelievable.
Let's go! What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Daily Dose with Dylan Davis, and today is a very special edition of the Daily Dose as the Sixers wrap up the first-round series against the Washington Wizards last night in great fashion, winning 129-112. On today's show, we are streaming to you guys live through the Paint Alliance Network on their YouTube and Twitter accounts and live through the DSM Media Twitch time with guy Dibes, one of the leaders here at TPL. You can give him a follow at Mr. Crockpot and Mr. Popular, Mr. Viral down there. I had to get in contact with his people just so he could come on the Daily Dose today. Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow at Mark Henry Jr. _. He is the host of the Tough Cover podcast, and the legend continues. Mark. Caroline gets the 16-0, and you're lucky.
26-0.
26-0. I'm sorry. 26-0.
Unreal. It's probably around 18-0 for the Sixers now, though. It's unbelievable. She doesn't even know what it feels like to go to a loss, and it's just that's all I used to know in the process.
What a feeling,
man!
But for those of you who have no idea what we're talking about, my man Mark down below right here, him and his girlfriend have been to a plethora of Phillies and Sixers events here in the city of Philadelphia over the last 2 years or so. And his girlfriend, Caroline, has never seen a loss in person. They're undefeated when they're in the arena. So Mark tweeted that out early yesterday morning before Game 5. And it caught fire. You sent it in. I'm like, oh, my God, dude. It's up to like over 10,000 likes now. It had like 250 quote tweets. I don't even know how many retweets and everything. People are calling him a jinx. And the funniest part, Dibes, is I had tickets to the game. So I hit Mark up. And when he said he was going, I'm like, where are you sitting? He goes, 216A. I'm like, I'm at 216A. So he was like a couple rows in front of me. So thank God the jinx didn't come through.
Yeah, man, it was unbelievable. I said it. I went on Marks and Reese on WIP today to kind of tell the story behind it because Jack Fritz reached out, which was awesome. And I was able to get a plug here for the Painted Lines and everything we're doing, and it was awesome. But I told the story. I picked my girlfriend up at 5 o'clock to go to the game and had around like 400 likes, which even that. Yeah, Justin just put it up on the screen. Yeah, even that, 400 likes for me is a ton of likes. And then by the time we got to the game at 6 o'clock, I think at that point it was at like 4,000. So it got like 3,600 likes in the span of about an hour. And yeah, now it's at 10.3K likes. And the Sixers tweeted, the main account of the Sixers tweeted out at me. It's absolutely insane.
I'm just honored that someone on your level of fame was able to join us today. Another guy here, Dibes. How are you feeling?
What are you talking about? I'm doing good, man. I'm just happy as a clam. How can you not be? How can Philadelphia not be? There's so many positives that have come from this series, especially in Game 5. I'm ready to talk about it, man. Let's talk some Sixers.
Yeah, let's get into it, guys. And we're just going to break down Game 5 and how everything went. So the first thing that sticks out to me is just that 129. They dropped 129 points without Joel Embiid, and that was one of the most shocking things to me last night. But why? So I talked about it the other day after the Game 4 loss, and all the eyes and fingers were being pointed to the free throws and the hack of Ben situation. And I was trying to explain, that's a part of it. But there was also a ton of other reasons why the Sixers lost that game. Well, just as there were a ton of reasons they lost Game 4, there were a ton of reasons that the Sixers won Game 5, and it starts with, Ben Simmons, who was unbelievable last night on both sides of the ball. He had a 19-point triple-double, knocked down free throws early in the game, which, the hack of Ben didn't work. The Wizards and Scott Brooks tried that nonsense and that crap in the first half. Why? Because they're not good enough to beat the Sixers in a regular 48-minute game, so they had to pull that shit out. They had to put Harris, what's his name? Garrison
Matthews?
Garrison, something. They had to throw him out there so he could use his foul, so none of the role players had to use their fouls. And that's one of my first takeaways is how great Ben Simmons was and how just he continues to respond to criticism here in this city. You know, like game 1, he had 6 points, but he had 15 and 15, and he had to listen to the free throws and all that nonsense. He comes back out, drops 22 the next game, was ultra aggressive. He has to hear about the free throws after the loss. Okay, I'm going to give you a 19-point triple-double, and we're going to wrap up business without Joel Embiid. So Ben Simmons is my number 1 takeaway from last night.
How can it not be? And I just want to like throw it out there that Garrison Matthews, like I cannot wait to throw that trivia question out in like 2-3 years. Like who was the guy that tried to hack a Ben in Game 5 versus the Washington Wizards? But Ben Simmons delivered all series long. People want to pick apart his free throw shooting. That's fine, and deservedly so. But he delivered in Game 5, and he was just an unbelievable on offense and on defense. I have the stats here. Let's do it. 107 defensive rating. He held the Wizards to 3 of 14 from three-point range. He held Bradley Beal to 23 points on 109 possessions, 10 of 25 from the field, only 1 of 9 from 3. Offensively, he was in total a plus 20, a plus 81, 59 true shooting percentage, 129 offensive rating, the highest of his playoff career in a series, and a 23.3 net, which is higher than James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving in round 1. Ben Simmons, for all the BS that this guy has been given, even in this series, it's unbelievable how still this small minority continue to pick apart this dude because he's underappreciated and he continues to deliver for the Sixers. Rightfully so. People are completely right. He needs to hit his free throws there in Game 4, but he did it in Game 5. Let's recognize it, and let's feel a little good about ourselves.
Mark,
today.
you were down there as well. Let me just throw this to you real quick. I want to know where these Twitter trolls, these Twitter Ben haters, and these Philly radio callers call in. Where are they? Because last night in a full capacity crowd, at least I didn't hear one peep of negativity or criticism towards Ben Simmons. Every time he checked into the game, when he was announced, every time he stepped to the free throw line, it was nothing but positive energy, nothing but cheers for 2-5. So I would love to know where these, Ben haters live and where they exist from in this city, because they weren't at the Wells Fargo Center last night.
They live in the shadows. I was certainly up there cheering for Ben Simmons, because what went under the radar for me last night, obviously with that big Twitter thing, I had an insane gambling night last night, including Ben Simmons to get a triple-double in a win, plus 875.
Wow.
So that was and not to mention he had 4 rebounds going into the fourth quarter, 6 rebounds in the fourth quarter, 2 rebounds in the last 3 minutes of a blowout that he didn't even need to be in. Unbelievable. So Ben Simmons was not only looking out for the Sixers, but he was looking out for my wallet. So that was just fantastic. Ben Simmons is the most confusing player of all time, and that's always what he's going to be. And the one thing I will say is I was listening to Philadelphia Sports Radio today more than I usually do, and there were the people calling in and be like, why don't we see that all the time? And it's like, oh my God, like, how can't you just sit there and enjoy it and look at the numbers and see what he's doing on the floor on both ends, especially defensively, how much he's annoying Bradley Beal. Even with how bad the officiating was, I thought that they really were not letting Ben especially really play defense out there.
And Russell Westbrook was playing tackle football, but
it was terrible. I thought the officiating was terrible, but Ben even still was being able to make an impression on both ends of the ball, especially defensively, as always. And if you don't think Ben is good enough to be the second or third best guy on a team that goes deep in a run, I don't know what you're watching anymore. At this point, the only question is, I don't think he's like, so people are like, oh, can we win the title without Joel Embiid? No. But say that about any team in the league. Right. If you take the best team the best player off of every team in the league, they are not winning the title. So we're going to need Joel Embiid, obviously. But the one thing I do want to say about the Hack-a-Ben, I personally don't mind it. because I think it shows such cowardice and such a lack of belief in your team and your defense that I think it's impossible to not permeate through the team when you call that as a coach. And then also we have a bad fast break defense. That's been a pretty massive issue down the stretch, and the Wizards are a very good fast break team. What that does is it completely eradicated the fast break, and I hope the Hawks try to do something like that, because the Hawks are a team that is very predominantly fast paced too. So I would love to see them try to enact the same strategy, and I'd love to see Ben step up and make the amount that he did last night. I don't know what he ended up at from the foul line. 5 of 8. It doesn't sound anything special, but it never had to be.
But he knocked down like 3 or 4 in the beginning of the game, and that put everything to bed. Like, you couldn't do that anymore. And like you said, it's just a cowardice move. You're telling your team we can't beat them under normal circumstances. So let me go pull the 19th dude down my bench and let him use up his fouls in the first half to try to put Ben at the free throw line to gain a couple point advantage. You guys are absolutely right. Ben Simmons was one of the more consistent players, one of the best players on the floor. And in a series clinching game, I think he was the best player on the floor. But another guy that I want to talk about from last night who filled the stat sheet, Mr. Tobias Harris, he struggled in game 4. He was another reason the Sixers lost game 4. He had a rough shooting night going 8 of 24. And then he bounces back last night, filling in the stat sheet, not only with 28 points, but with 9 boards and 6 assists as well, a couple steals as well, playing good defense. It started a little rocky for Tobias, I thought, but then especially in that second half, he kicked in and he delivered offensively, possession after possession when the Sixers needed it. And Tobias Harris was awesome last night, yet again. So for every one poor Tobias Harris game, you're going to get 5 great Tobias Harris games, and normally it's reversed. So
he was my key to success for Game 5 when I did my preview. He had his worst offensive rating there, a 90 in like over a month. So to see, we talk about that efficient offense, the Sixers getting good looks. That's what I wanted to see from Tobias Harris. You looked at Game 4. Dude could not capitalize on Ish Smith, Bradley Beal, Russell Westbrook at all. I think he went up against Beal and Westbrook, like 1 of 6 from the field. That was my concern, is his ISO scoring it's not been great in this series. And what I wanted to see from Toby in Game 5 is, cement himself again and show why he can use his size and take advantage of those mismatches. That is such a huge key when we're going to move forward here against the Atlanta Hawks and against whoever, the Bucks or the Nets, in the Eastern Conference Finals. For me, Toby was awesome. I mean, you kind of saw it there. Like, what was it? He had 16 points there through the second quarter at one point. I thought specifically though, his defense, especially in the second half, really take controls. And Ben, there was a play where he like stripped the ball and gave it to Ben on the other end, who was cherry picking. He had 6 points in the third quarter. He had a really great pass to Ben Simmons underneath the basket. He was just kind of doing it all. He was definitely locked in. That's the efficient Tobias Harris we have seen all season. Glad to see it. He needs to play at that level. If just like everyone else needs to kind of chip in and Joel needs to be healthy. Tobias Harris, we need his ability to take on mismatches because I think we're only going to see more and more of him at the 4 and 5 moving forward.
Yeah, and he's giving you, I'll throw this to Mark. He's giving you more than just, numbers in the points category as well. He had 28, 9, and 6, and played well defensively with a couple steals last night. Like, when I was thinking of Tobias Harris, being that max contract player for the Sixers, I just, if he could average a little over 20, that'd be great. I never imagined he'd be averaging. I think in the series he averaged 25 and 10, and then chipped in, in other areas of his game. So he has been fantastic. So go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I have a bunch of takeaways just on Tobias specifically, and my biggest one, and it sounds like I'm rudimentarily talking about basketball because I harp on this on Twitter and everything about the Sixers. I just want the Sixers to shoot threes. Like, I just want these guys who are good at shooting 3-pointers to shoot them. Tobias Harris has had an incredible season. He has been everything we could have hoped in a lot of ways. His 3-point volume is actually down. And that's just something I find confusing, even though it's more efficient. He's only shooting like a little over 3-pointers per game this year. Or I can't remember if that's over the full year or the second half. I can't quite remember if that was the stat. But last night he gets 5 off. And I want him shooting almost a third of his shots or a quarter of his shots from the 3-point line, because that's something we need to space out this team, especially without Joel Embiid on the floor. That's such an important thing. And like I've said about Tobias on the defensive end, I really just think, honestly, Matisse and Ben's energy and the way that they go at the defender or go at the offensive player as a defender is just so infectious. And I think Tobias is one of those guys that sees people trying their ass off and hustling and going all over the place. He's like, I want to match that. I want to match that. And he's putting his hand in there, poking. Danny Green had a TJ McConnell steal on the inbound where he gets the little layup. So those things were awesome to see, and I really think that is just a byproduct of how good Ben and Matisse are defensively. And I mean, Matisse had a quiet game; like he wasn't as impactful as he's been in other games. But you look at the thing that he did do; he had 7 points. He hit one of 3 threes. He took 3 threes. He at least made one. That's all I'm asking. If Matisse shot 33% from the 3-point line and went 1 of 3 every game and made a 3 every game, okay. Like that's fine because of what he brings on the defensive end. And everyone on their team really did their job. Like I thought Danny Green was frustrating at times, but he still stepped up in certain moments and stepped up on defense and made that play that I talked about and a couple other plays, even though he missed a couple wide open threes to start the game.
Yeah, Danny Green struggled from 3 early. He had a couple of crazy open looks from the corners, and he couldn't knock any down. But he did things in other ways, in other areas to impact this game. And then down the stretches, I believe his 5 points came at the end of the first half when he plucked Russell Westbrook and then got the layup through over 2 defenders. And then I think he hit a 3 towards the end of the first half. But just to go off of your comment there, Mark, like, this team, I think you talk about everyone stepping up, and Dibes, you mentioned it too. I think everyone, not just individual, not just as a team as a whole, but as individuals, took this as a challenge without Joel Embiid, and everyone, and I mean everyone, stepped up to that challenge last night. Dwight Howard had one of his best games in months, maybe his best game in months, shooting 80% from the free throw line. I made a comment at one point before he hit like his last 3 or whatever. But Shake didn't play a lot, so I'm not even going to include him in this. But he hit 8 of 10, and at one point before he hit like his last 2 or 3 free throws, I'm like, dude, he might have made more free throws in this game than he has since February. Like he was just stepping up to the line, and I think like. And someone made a comment on Marks and Reese earlier, Mark, because I was listening before I listened to you come on. And he was talking, it might have been, I think it was John Marks. He was talking about how, they kept showing Dwight when Ben was stepping up to the free throw line earlier, and his infectious like smile and trying to get Ben into it and getting everyone into it. I think he's in that same level of shooting free throws as Ben, and he took it as a challenge and he stepped up and knocked them down. And then another guy that stepped up greatly last night, Seth Curry, gives you a 30-piece in a series-clinching game. My God, I never expected that from Seth Curry in a playoff game. How many career highs did the Sixers have in this playoff series? Tobias Harris swear to God, Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid, and Seth Curry, I'm pretty sure, all have new career playoff highs in this series.
Jesus.
Seth Curry was unreal last night, and not only did he score 30, but he set the tempo. He controlled the tempo starting the second half in that third quarter. He had like the Sixers' first 7 points or 9 points or something like that, and set the tone really for the second half and for the win.
Yeah, he was the MVP. I mean, I thought he was the MVP, and I thought he was the guy who was stepping up and making shots when we needed them the most. I think that this is going to sound crazy coming from me. I think there's been a lot said about Tyrese Maxie in the last 16 hours to 20 hours.
Yeah, I'm going to
Maybe it's just because I have been so in love with Tyrese Maxey for like 16 months now, but maybe it's just that I'm expecting this. I'm not as shocked as some people appear to be. And I guess like you said, I never would have thought Seth Curry would have dropped 30. Like I thought Seth Curry's performance was more important than Tyrese's last night, was more surprising than Tyrese's last night. And I thought Tyrese got a little more buzz nationally and on Sixers Twitter than Seth Curry, and I thought that was just interesting. And by the way, I'm not against Tyrese Maxey getting any type of buzz. Hey, half of Sixers Twitter was trying to trade him for a 37-year-old washed up 6-foot point guard a couple months ago, and I was having to yell at everybody. So I love Tyrese Maxey. I have no problems with him getting credit. I just thought I thought people weren't giving Seth Curry enough credit. He was doing things that you don't see him do generally. Obviously, like, him hitting threes is not a surprise.
And
him
real
going
quick-
3 of 6 from 3 is not a surprise. But the way he was dribble driving, the way
he showed Rui Hachimura the back door.
Woo!
See ya.
Woo!
There's your way out. There's your way out the wells, Rui.
Can you imagine if this team is awesome? Like, we're talking at length. Everyone stepped up. Just imagine this team with Josh Richardson instead of Seth Curry. It's not the same team. It's not even close. It's not even close.
No, he was awesome. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about Seth Curry setting the tone for Game 5. He had a quick 7 points there in the first quarter. Talking about third quarter, dude had 11 straight points, including that crazy step back 3 and then a floater right after that. The dude was locked in. He set the tone for the Sixers. I want to quick touch on Dwight Howard and what a roller coaster season it has been for Dwight. I loved him when he first started the season. Then it kind of got a little rocky, and then I ended up like, nah, I'm out. I'm done with Dwight Howard. Man showed up yesterday. He was the rock there in the paint. He had a block on Ish Smith that was awesome. Dude was just playing out of his mind. And then quickly on Tyrese Maxie, what more can you say? This collectively, I think Tyrese Maxie had all my favorite moments in this series. And this has come from someone who loves Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. The Joel Embiid block, the Ben Simmons, so many different plays. Put one-handed alley-oops, put-back slam. There's so many great moments. But Tyrese Maxie shoving Shake Milton out the door and say, nah, son, that spot is mine. I am part of this playoff rotation. The speed of the playoffs seemed to be a perfect fit for Tyrese Maxie. His first step is absolutely insane. And for me, about Game 5, what I remember about Tyrese Maxie are the plays that didn't even show up in the box score. There was a play there, I think, in that third quarter where he crossed up Raul Neto, I believe.
Yep.
Just like an Allen Iverson-esque crossover first step. And it was a lob to, I think, Ben Simmons.
Yeah, they got broken up. Yeah.
Broken up. That was the quickest crossover I've seen.
Can I tell you something from being there? The roof would have went off.
Yeah.
Came off the wall, Ferguson.
The noise was crazy when that happened.
How about that missed dunk by Tyrese Maxie?
Yep.
He's a goaltender.
Like you said, Dylan, that would have brought the house down. This guy is lightning in a bottle. He's everything the Sixers need in terms of a guy that can beat his man off the dribble, drive, kick, or beat you around the paint. His, I think he's shooting around like 50+% there on drives to the basket in the playoffs. He has 2 turnovers in 77 minutes in this series. Just talk about a rookie stepping up. This guy delivered, man, and I'm just so proud of that guy. I'm a huge I've always been a Tyrese Maxie fan, and man, is that guy just lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, Mark brought it up earlier. I was one of those dudes that, Kyle Lowry would have been a perfect fit on this team. And if it has to do with Tyrese Maxie, we got to part ways with Tyrese Maxie. And, if you would have asked me a couple months ago who's in the playoff rotation, Shake Milton or Tyrese Maxie, I would have laughed in your face if you answered Tyrese Maxie. This kid, I want to use a different word than Abe used here, stones. This kid's got stones, dude. I said it after Game 4, even after the loss, and I'll continue to say it. He comes in off the bench, and he provides an instant spark. Especially, at home, it's important. At home, it's great because the crowd goes nuts when he gets introduced. But on the road, if the team's down and out, he provides an instant spark. And the moment's not too big. I think that was the biggest question with him being that 20-year-old rookie, not playing a whole lot this regular season. Would the moment get too big in these situations? And it's not.
What I was so impressed was the 2-man game with him and Dwight. That was magical last night. They were just feeding off each other. The spacing was great. I don't know what the stats look like just last night in Game 5. Look like between Tyrese Maxie as a ball handler in the pick and roll, but they were unstoppable. They could not be stopped.
And a guy that didn't really impact the box score at all last night, but I'll give him a little shout out, who continues to just be a calming veteran presence, is George Hill. He orchestrated. He wasn't great last night, don't get me wrong, but this series I thought he was very good.
I have some thoughts on George Hill.
If you watched the series and thought something negative out of George Hill, I thought he was great the entire series.
I kind of have. I kind of have thought pretty negative out of George Hill. He doesn't shoot.
Yes, he does.
He's shooting like 50% in the catch and shoot, I think.
Well, he doesn't. The problem is he shot the ball 0 times yesterday in 14 minutes.
Sure.
He's played 14, and it's not like, he didn't get any chances. He had 3 or 4 plays where he got the ball beyond the 3-point line with like no one within 3 feet of him, and he's a good shooter.
No,
It's just frustrating to me, and because I go and watch the Denver Nuggets, and Austin Rivers is playing fantastic. Just a little stat breakdown here for you with Austin Rivers and George Hill for us and Austin Rivers for Denver. Per 36 for Denver, Austin Rivers is 12 points, 3.5 assists, 3 rebounds, 1 steal on 42, 37, and 71. George Hill is pretty close. He's 11.5 points, 3.8, 3.6, 1.3 steals on 44, 39, 76. So the percentages are very slightly higher. A little more assists, a little less rebounds, a little more steals. The difference is Austin Rivers is doing that on 6.3 threes attempted per 36, and George Hill is doing that on 2.7 threes attempted per 36. And in these games without Joel Embiid, that's going to be an issue. Well, we don't know without Joel Embiid. We have no idea how many games, whatever. But I think that's a very big issue. And I agree. I've been complimentary of George Hill a ton. I think he's been very calming presence. I think he does the little things in a way that when you say, and I think I've said in the past, I roll my eyes a lot of the times when it's, we traded for this guy. He's a veteran presence in the locker room. He's going to help everyone out. He's going to help the young guys out. I usually roll my eyes at that. With George Hill, I buy into it 1,000,000%, and I completely understand it. And if Austin Rivers is a scumbag who Doc didn't want to coach on his son, maybe that's the case, and maybe there's some smoke there. But my only thing is maybe Hill's a little bit better than Rivers. I'd rather have the option of Tony Bradley with Austin Rivers than just George Hill personally. But with how good Dwight Howard was last night, I wasn't as longing for Tony Bradley. But Dwight Howard still only played 15 minutes. 15 minutes.
Where are you at if you have no George Hill and you have Shake Milton playing like crap?
Well, I'm saying I think Austin Rivers would fill in for that spot. Yeah. Is what I'm saying, because he's been basically a carbon copy in Denver of George Hill, just playing a little bit more minutes and shooting a lot more often.
Sure, yeah, I just think it kind of goes to George Hill's role, and that they don't. I mean, sure, when he's wide open, you would love to see him because he is a very efficient 3-point shooter.
Exactly.
And I think that just goes back to your, annoyance when these good 3-point shooters in Philadelphia just don't shoot them when they're open. Seth Curry earlier in the year was passing up wide open looks. But I think he's been great just as a calming presence. Like the one comment said, I think yesterday was probably his worst game. It was definitely his worst game of the series, but I think overall he's been pretty good. Just to wrap up this series talk, just to me, guys, it was your classic 8-1. I mean, they were outmatched. The Wizards were able to steal a game at home with a Joel Embiid injury after 11 minutes of play. Ben Simmons in foul trouble, refs, Tobias Harris poor shooting, everything that night fell the Wizards' way, and they barely squeaked out a home win. They got bounced early. And then my other thing is, and then also the point differential. So outside of the Sixers loss, they outscored the Wizards by almost 80 points in the 4 wins. And then my last point is, I've always been a huge believer that Russell Westbrook is greatly disrespected and underappreciated in this league. And by the media and everybody. And I've also been a huge believer of, my God, could you imagine if the Sixers somehow got Bradley Beal in a Sixers uniform without giving up Ben Simmons in that fit? Right now, I'm just I don't even care, because those two pissed me the hell off all series. Russell Westbrook,
the worst.
I don't even know what to say about him after this series, dude. And Bradley Beal, you had the balls to come out last night. Honestly, if you're just trying to save face, come on, dude. You're going to tell national media that you lost. You got bounced in 5. Outside of your 1 win, you got beat by 7, 12, 7, 30, and 20 or whatever. And you're going to tell the national media that you really think you could have taken the Sixers to 7? Are you joking? I know you're trying to save face here, dude, but come on. That's a joke, right?
Yeah, I love both players. I love watching both players,
Sure.
but I can't lie about the fact that they were definitely antagonistic this entire series towards Philadelphia
And
fans
like
and the Philadelphia crowd.
mean mugging the crowd when you won
Yeah,
one game, and like what are you doing? And then it just spreads down it's a trickle down effect. You got Rui Hachimura flexing and screaming on Tobias Harris. Like, what is going on?
I will say all three of those guys played fantastic yesterday.
outside of
Westbrook, Beal, and Hachimura, all three
Yeah.
of those guys did kill it yesterday. But the rest of that team sucks so bad.
As a basketball player, what does that tell you when you're like flopping, grabbing, doing every little thing you can against Ben Simmons?
To gain a little bit of
you are
advantage.
outmatched. You don't have the talent as Ben Simmons. It means you're going to desperate measures that they knew that they were dead to rights. And when you see that as a competitor, it's obvious. It's so obvious that they knew exactly what was going to happen. And sure enough, the Sixers won 4-1.
All right, boys. Well, now go ahead.
One quick thing. We can't get out of here. We can't stop talking about Game 5 without mentioning Furkan Korkmaz. Furkan Korkmaz was fantastic last night, guys. And he was fantastic defensively too. Yeah, he was fantastic on both ends.
Actually, I'm glad you said that, because I do have one more takeaway that I mentioned the dives before we went live here, and I just think that's one thing that was a huge question mark, right? About this rotation. I think you've kind of seen it. I think against Washington in 5 games, you saw it play itself out, to be honest with you. The fact that Shake Milton's playing, no more than like 8 minutes, and he's getting spare run here just to see how he looks. And then if he looks bad, Doc's ripping him. Tyrese Maxie's one of the first subs. Obviously, Thibault had to start last night because of no Joe, but he's going to be off the bench. It's going to be Thibault, Maxie, and then George Hill. And then I think it comes down to Dwight and Furk are going to play, depending on it's going to be very situational. I think Dwight's going to play regardless, but Furk's going to be very situational depending on how the game's playing out, so we'll see. But I think that's definitely a rotation. I think Shake Milton has found his way all the way down to like the 11th or 12th man or whatever the numbers play out to.
No doubt.
But now, guys, the attention turns towards the next task. So what I'm going to start this with just how I'm feeling, because now as excited and pumped up as I am and as I was last night after a series win, my mental health relies on the health of a 7-foot Cameroonian man who plays center for the Philadelphia 76ers. And I saw him very confusing. I saw him in full warm-ups, shooting free throws and warming up yesterday at the arena, with no sleeve or no brace, as far as I could see. He might have had a sleeve under something, but there was definitely no brace, and I didn't see a sleeve on his knee. So take that for what you will. He's still listed as day-to-day. He's a game-time decision for Sunday. So let's just assume that he misses game. Let's assume that he has to miss time versus the series. I know where you stand, Mark. Dives, where do you stand with this Hawks series if Joel Embiid's unable to play?
I mean, Joel is everything. It's obviously so I do think the Sixers will win the series regardless. If you get no Joel whatsoever, I still think the Sixers pull it out like in 6. But you have to be concerned. What have you seen historically this season? I think the Sixers are like 10-11 or so without Joel Embiid this season.
Yeah, now they're probably like 500. Yeah.
What you see though, I looked into the stats yesterday. And it was kind of concerning heading into Game 5 is the pace goes down without Joel Embiid and the free throws go up. And I think the glass half full take is that Doc adjusted in Game 5. And what that means, Ben at the 5, that's kind of my takeaway. I'm going to stay cautiously optimistic that the Sixers can still pull it out. Obviously, they have no shot moving forward beyond that. But you look at the Hawks, the Sixers have historically done well against teams that are like, you can stop one guy and let everyone else, try and beat you. Ben Simmons, you look at Trae Young's career numbers when defended by these Sixers. Ben Simmons, 37 possessions, only 8 points. Trae Young has only shot 3 of 15 against Ben Simmons, 1 of 7 from 3. Matisse Thybulle, 20 points and 29 possessions. And Danny Green, absolutely got torched against Trae Young there in like just 15 possessions. So it'll be interesting to see how they battle Trae Young for sure. I think that's, you're going to see a lot of Tyrese Maxie, especially there, because you want to get Trae Young running around on the opposite end of the court as well. So for me right now, Sixers in 6 with no Joel Embiid. I like the way the Sixers match up. And the Hawks actually play at the bottom third of the league in pace, which I think also bodes well for the Sixers. It's a completely different animal compared to the Washington Wizards, which were like one of the top 3 scoring teams in the league, one of the top teams in transition. That's the Achilles heel. The other Achilles heel of the Sixers, though, however, is stopping the pick and roll and guys that can dribble, penetrate, and score around the rim. That's the issue. The Hawks are the number 2 team in the league when it comes to running the pick and roll, and they're pretty efficient at it. I think 77th percentile. That's what I'm going to be watching.
Yeah, man. So I'm just going to give my take and then base this to Mark because I can't get a read on this series. Don't think if Joel Embiid's healthy, or even if he's if he's 85%, 80% Joel Embiid this series, and then he gets healthier towards the Eastern Conference Finals, or if he just misses game 1, I have no fear in this series. If he's not, I'm not going to lie, guys. I'm a little nervous. Because you go back to that early season matchup against Atlanta in Atlanta when we got beat up on, and that was when the Sixers were battling COVID and they were missing everybody outside of Joel Embiid, right? And then you look at the most recent matchups. Trae Young, when we ran them out of the Wells Fargo Center 2 nights in a row, Trae Young missed a game, and I'm pretty sure I don't think DeAndre Hunter played. I don't think Kevin Huerter played. I don't know if Gallinari played. So they haven't been fully healthy either. Don't get me wrong. This Hawks team can't play a lick of defense. But they can score with the best of them, right? So if you take Embiid out of that picture, now you're battling a great offensive team with what the Sixers have. If Embiid's there, it's not an issue. It's a 5-game series to me if he's there. Maybe Atlanta can steal 2 games if he's playing, but I don't know. It all relies and is dependent on Joel Embiid's health. I'm not saying the Sixers can't beat the Hawks without him. They can, but it definitely makes it a lot more worrisome. And I'm going to be a lot more hopeful rather than, confident.
Yeah, I don't have much of a read on it either. I don't have much of a read on the series. It's really just going to depend on, what type of Joel we're getting, if we get him. How many games is he out? It really, more than anything, is going to be determined on Joel, and also determined on if Dwight Howard can look like he looked like last night, if Ben Simmons can look like he looked like last night without him. So I wouldn't be betting on this series. I'm not very confident on either side in terms of what's going to happen, just due to the unknown and the question marks that are surrounding it. But the one thing that I will say is I don't think Bogdanovich has played us yet this year. It might have been one time. He may have played one of the 3 games. I haven't deep dove really into the stats yet, but I do know Bogdan has missed a lot of time, and when he has been playing down the stretch, he has really been the key that's kind of unlocked that offense, and he really has killed the Knicks. And something that Bogdanovich does really well is he thrives in chaos. He kind of thrives when a possession's going to shit, or excuse my French, but when a possession's going down the toilet, when no one knows what to do, there's 6 seconds left, and you slap the ball to Bogdan, he seems like he can just get a shot off in a phone booth. Like he really just does not need much time to do it. But he's the guy that I'm really worried about. And then someone who's killed the Sixers since way back in the process days, way back when he was a Knick. Danilo Gallinari is someone who I could 100% see having a 28-point night one of these games, and it's like, what the hell happened where Danilo Gallinari beat us single-handedly? But everyone's going to focus on Trae Young. Everyone's going to talk about that ugly guy and his dumb hair. So just so everyone knows, I'm not going to be able to be rational about this series. Like last series, I was pretty rational. I like Russell Westbrook. I know a lot of people hate him. I like Bradley Beal. Trae Young is my by far least favorite player in the league. Okay. And a lot of it has less to do with how he plays on the court. I think he's a great player, and more to do with his personality and how he tweets like a D3 athlete and how he thinks he's the underdog story. Even though he was like a college player of the year and a high school huge recruit and the number 3 pick got traded for the number 3 pick of the draft and whatever. But I can't stand Trae Young. But the reason that I'm nervous about this series is not because of Trae Young. It's because they went out and spent $100 million in the offseason. They went out last year and traded for Clint Capela basically for free. So they basically added Bogdanovich, Danilo Gallinari, Clint Capela, all these guys for free to what they already had in Trae Young and Kevin Huerter and DeAndre Hunter. So
John Collins.
Yeah, I completely forgot about John Collins. Yeah, John Collins is going to be a really interesting matchup in this series with Tobias Harris. Obviously, Tobias Harris has been fantastic defensively this year, especially on bigger guys. So I do think that we could have an advantage there. I'd have to look into it because John Collins missed a lot of time and has missed a lot of time in the last couple of years in general. So I don't know how much Tobias Harris has covered John Collins, but he it seems like that would be a good matchup for us, to be honest, because he's defended big so well. But yeah, they just have a lot of different options. Like when you talk about rotations, I think a lot of the reason that the Hawks were struggling so hard at the early part of this year with Lloyd Pierce was because they had so many options that he couldn't just figure out where to go. And now Nate McMillan has gotten in there. He's ironed out the rotations. And I think we saw how good their offense is just by how well they did against the New York Knicks, who had the number 1 defense in basketball.
Guys, before we get you out of here, man, because I know you got to run. What'd you say?
I'm not taking anything I saw out of that Knicks series, and I'm not going to be true. The Sixers are a completely different animal. They're not this ISO heavy team. The Sixers are going to beat you to death with pick and roll. They're going to beat you to death in transition, and they don't have nearly the amount of talent. And lastly, before I leave, I'm not one to make fun of hairdos, so I'm just going to say Sixers in 6. I can't, who am I to make fun of someone?
I think it's just the fact that he's like 22 and balding, but
I'm still jealous. All right, guys.
Thanks, Dives. So, guys, go check him out on Twitter at Mr. Crockpot. What's going on? There we go. Yeah, Mark, just going off of everything you said, and I know there's comment here. Those are just names. Like, they're not, though. They're good. They're good NBA players, and Dives could be right. We probably shouldn't read too much into a series with a New York Knicks team who were overhyped, and people got so obsessed with the Garden. Basketball's back at the Garden. Well, they don't play. The Garden doesn't play the game. Okay, Julius Randle, who's their best player, was awful in that series, and they had no superstars. They had no stars. Right, Julius Randle's their biggest star, and he was awful. And that's why going back, like. This isn't I told you so because I think the Sixers will beat the Hawks, especially if Joel Embiid plays. It's a 5-game series, but they can still beat them without him. I'm hopeful. But for everyone that was like rather playing the Hawks and the Knicks, I didn't see where they were coming from. I don't know where you stood on that. I would have much rather played the New York Knicks than the Atlanta Hawks. Okay, yeah, the Knicks are really good at defense. Okay, how are they going to beat you offensively, dude? How are they going to trade? They might steal one game because they're a good defensive team. Okay. Like the Hawks have all this firepower. They have a star talent. I know you hate him, but a guy in Trae Young who just averaged 30 and 10 against that's the New York. That's the New York Knicks. But you can't just say that's New York Knicks if you're going to say they're a great defensive team. And then you like you said, Bogdanovich is a huge X factor in that series. Collins' size and length and athleticism could provide mismatches. Capela at the center position. So like it comes down if Embiid doesn't play, right? I'm assuming we would hope that Doc kept the same mentality of Ben at the 5 with 5 gunners, you know what I mean? And not start Mike Scott or Dwight Howard with Ben to get and putting their minutes together. However, what do you do? Like Ben can't bang down low with Capela, like can he? I think he's too much man at a certain point.
Yeah, I think it's something that you're probably going to still have to try no matter what.
Right, and make them try to get smaller, I guess, but...
Yeah, and try to take a charge, try to get Capela's fouls up. But Capela's foul trouble is going to be a really interesting thing in this series, especially once Joel Embiid plays. Because just if he's such an important part of their offense, he's such an important part of what they do from a pick and roll perspective. And I know I think a comment above said something about we need Joel Embiid for his pick and roll defense, but even beyond that, we need Joel Embiid to force fouls against Clint Capela, so we don't have to be worried about pick and roll defense all game with Clint Capela. So that it's really an interesting dichotomy with what's going to happen against Clint Capela with Joel Embiid and without Joel Embiid, because it's probably going to be one of the X factors in the series in a similar way to what has been the X factor in the Nuggets Portland series, which has been Yusuf Nurkic against Nikola Jokic. I didn't even mean to do this right now, but I guess I should just I'll just get my pick out of the way here. So an interesting stat with this Denver-Portland series so far, and I think it plays into what could happen next round with Hawks and Sixers, especially with Joel Embiid. It's been the MVP for the Portland Trailblazers has been Jusuf Nurkic. The MVP for the Denver Nuggets has been Nikola Jokic. That might sound crazy because Damian Lillard just had literally one of the craziest games I've ever seen in my entire life. That was outrageous. But the 3 games that the Blazers have lost, Jusuf Nurkic just fouled out in. The 2 games that they've won, he stayed under 4 fouls. So that has really been the X factor in that series. He's missed the last 6 minutes of the fourth quarter in all 3 of those losses. If that can happen, and where Joel's forcing Clint Capela to miss the last 6 minutes of a fourth quarter, that's going to be huge in a close game in terms of not having to worry about the pick and roll as much. That is going to be so impactful. But going against that, I'll go with the trends. He's fouled out 3 times. He hasn't fouled out 2 times. The Nuggets are +5 tonight. I think this should be a pick 'em. After seeing Dame go supernova, after seeing Covington play his best game of the playoffs, and seeing Portland still come up short, I have to switch sides. And I've been so off on this series, but I love Denver tonight, +5, and on the money line, +176, both for 2 units, 2 units on the money, 2 units on the spread, 2 units on the money line to win 3.5 units. As someone backing Denver, I'll be rooting for Jokic to get Nurkic in foul trouble, obviously. I just think +5 is a gift. I think it should be a pick 'em.
I'll tell you a series I'm not betting on, and that's the other team out in LA that played last night. Dude, what is going? The home team hasn't won a game. I have no idea who wins. Suns versus Lakers. AD is a game time. Yeah, he's a game time decision. I'm going to tell you right now, the Suns are putting that away tonight.
Oh, you think so?
Away.
I'm staying away because I have no idea. I feel the same. I feel the same way about Suns, Lakers, and Mavs, Clippers. I haven't been betting it just because I have no read. Like, I have no idea what's going to happen with those stupid LA teams. But
now that I said that, AD will play tonight and drop 33. But that's
if AD plays, I think the Lakers are going to win. I feel pretty confident in that. I don't think he's playing. He did not look good the last time he played, but I don't think he's going to play. But I ended up staying away from that game. And honestly, just while I'm on it, because I don't really have much notes on it. Nuggets, Blazers, I also have the over 227.5 for 2.5 units. 4 of the 5 games in the series have went over that number. 5 of the last 6 games they've played against each other have went over that number as well. So I like the Nuggets +5, Nuggets money line, and over 227.5 in Nuggets Blazers. So I'm all over that 8 o'clock matchup out west.
Does Caroline sign off on these since she's the undefeated one?
She's got no input on my gambling. I wish I could bring her over here and win every bet if she was watching. Jesus. Reeling
it back into this series though, and just again getting on to the thing that we got distracted last night, right? Because of a great Sixers win, but have no doubt about it. It all relies on the health of 2-1, and especially you forget this series going forward, right? So let me ask you, if it is just cautionary, because there's been a comment about his meniscal tear, there's been tweets about it, there's been reporters talking about it, and then there's the dads that play pickup ball that say I tore my meniscus doing this. So I'm seeing a lot of people saying you can play through it. I'm seeing a lot of people saying the lateral tear is better than the medial tear. It's a small tear. He could have had it for a while. You can MRI a bunch of players. They probably have a similar tear. Some people are saying the wording from the news that the Sixers broke, the wording of it about the injury sounds like a grade 1 MCL sprain, which means it'll be okay. I have no idea. What I'm saying is him warming up in full warm-ups last night with nothing on his knee just screams it's okay. Like, he's going to be okay. So let me ask you this. If you're the Sixers, what is Mark Henry doing? Let's say he can play again, because me and you are kind of weary of the series without him. Let's say he can play, but they want to be cautious, so they don't play him, and they think they're good enough to beat him at home without Joel Embiid. Or do you sit him and be cautious, or do you play him because game 1 at home, like you want to get out and get a good start on this series?
So I'm going to be boring here, and I'm going to be like a shitty guest here, but I just don't know. Like it's so much of it. Like I wish that I could look at it from like a strategy perspective, like, oh, what would I do to try to, what's the smartest way to try to win the series? But I think it just all depends how he feels that day. And I know that people aren't going to want to hear that. People aren't going to want to wait around and see how someone feels that day. But that's just, I think that's just the nature of where we're at right now. And I don't think we should be too not used to it. It's happened plenty before with this big fella. And I think he's the type of player where you can't get annoyed with it because he's done everything he's supposed to have done this year. He showed up in shape. He's tried his ass off. He's played almost the whole year. I know he had that one stretch, but he's been everything we could have hoped for him to be.
With his mindset this year and the level of play he's been at and looking for a championship, if there's a way if Joel Embiid can play, he's going to play. That's my personal opinion.
I agree.
This person says you sit him out the first game and see how we do. 100%. Did we play the Hawks this year without Joel?
We did, but
neither team has been fully healthy, so that's why I'm saying I can't get a read on what the series is going to be like. Again, if Joel's healthy and he's playing, the Sixers win this series with ease, in my opinion. If he's out, it's a lot riskier. I don't know what I would do, and I've also seen reports that you're not going to know until he plays on it and see how his knee reacts. See if there's swelling afterwards, if his pain threshold with it. Like, you're not going to know until he's playing, basically. So you can do all that therapy. You can pop some pills, whatever you're going to do pre-game, at halftime, post-game to get him ready for this. His knee's going to react a certain way, and that's what it comes down to. So we will definitely see what happens with the big fella. But man, it's deflating. It's heartbreaking, the fact that this happened again in Washington, like in the first round. So prayers up, because I'm praying that he plays on Sunday and the Sixers get out to a 1-0 lead. Mark, we haven't done predictions yet. So how do you want to do this? With and without, or are we just...
Yeah. It's hard to even do that. Like, I think without him, I'll say Hawks in 6. With him, like, what is with him though? It's like, are we playing 28 minutes a game, Joel, does he look 60%, or does he look 100, or does he look 90%? Like, it's all going to depend on what type of Joel we're seeing. And I see a lot of people like this. I wonder if he'll change up his play style to be less dunk heavy, or like they're kind of. I think basketball players are who they are when they're on the basketball floor, and I don't think that in injuries.
Are who they are.
Exactly. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And I just don't see. I don't think he's going to completely change his game. Maybe that's something you could do in an off season. Maybe that's something you could like work on. But I don't think that's got something where he played the other day and now he's going to come out and play. The only thing I will say about sitting him game 1 maybe is I don't know when game 2 is yet. They haven't announced that yet. If that game's on like Wednesday, it's either going to be Tuesday or Wednesday. It's not going to be Monday,
that's
obviously. What? Yeah, that dunk he did.
No. Your point, because if it gets to Wednesday, not till Wednesday, then that's like a week and a half rest, or 2 weeks, or almost 2 weeks rest since the injury, right? Or am I?
Yeah, yeah. It would be like because it
would be a little over a week.
Yeah, it would be between a week and a half. That could be a good amount of time to at least get him off of it and get him used to it, get him walking around on it, working out on it. That could be huge. And yeah, the one thing I will say is if you sit him game 1 and then you win game 1, I feel like you won the series. Like that is like a mental weird thing, and I don't know, but obviously.
The thing I'm just weary about with that, though, is that the Sixers' mindset doesn't go. They win game 1 without him. They squeak out a win or whatever. And then their mindset goes to, we can beat him without him. So then it's 2. And then it's, you know what I mean? It's tied 1-1 going back to Atlanta. I don't know. We'll definitely see. I'm going to say this year I trust them. They haven't done anything this year to, make me think otherwise, like previous years.
Or like Joe Girardi with Bryce Harper.
Sure, exactly.
I had to bring up my guy Joe Girardi.
All right, Mark. Are there any other picks before we get out of here that you have for tonight?
Yeah, real quick. I had those 3 Nuggets picks: Nuggets +5, Nuggets money line, over 227.5, Nuggets Blazers. But then in hockey, Marky Pucks this year in the NHL. I've been 8-3 in the NHL so far. I'm going with the New York Islanders +118 versus the Boston Bruins for 2 units. I've been riding with the Islanders in the playoffs, and I always want every Bostonian team possible to lose. Islanders won game 2 in Boston, so I love the momentum going the Islanders' way, going back home to New York. I love the plus money at home with even teams. And if you're not watching the Barstool Frankie Borelli versus the Boston Bruins guys stream on YouTube, it's pretty crazy to watch these people tackle each other out. Like these hockey, I'm not a hockey guy, so I've been following this series through their YouTube videos of like tackling each other when they score goals and stuff. But hockey fans are insane. It's crazy to see. And I've kind of been getting into the hockey playoffs. They've been fun. So I think
playoffs are great.
They've been a great time. And then my bet of the night, real quick, let me pull this up. Yeah, my bet of the night at 9:45 is baseball. It's the only baseball pick on my board. I've got the Chicago Cubs over Gabe Kapler's fighting San Francisco Giants. The Cubs roster has a 1.021 OPS against Anthony DeSclafani, as opposed to the Giants roster having a 0.592 OPS against Zach Davies. They both rosters have seen those pitchers an absolute ton, so those trends are pretty rock solid. The Cubs come in hot, and their best bats hit the Giants starter really well, and the bullpen for the Giants is tired, having pitched a bunch in the last couple of days. So I love the Cubs tonight. That's my best bet.
All right. So before we get out of here, I'm going to give my predictions for an early prediction for the series versus the Hawks, and we will be back on Monday to discuss Game 1, but I'm going to assume that the big fella is going to be okay. I'm not saying that he's going to play Game 1, but he's going to be back at some point, midway early in this series. So I'm going to say that the Sixers, if he's back by at least Game 2, the Sixers win this in 5 at the Wells Fargo Center. If he's not, I'm worried. I'm way more nervous. But I'm going to say the Sixers in 7. I'm not going to say the Sixers in 6 because that would mean a win in Atlanta. I would say that Trey and then pull that out there, and then it comes back home for 7, and they're not beating the Sixers at the Wells Fargo Center in a Game 7, even without Joel Embiid. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on for today's show is just, other fan bases. And everyone has a right to be, confident in their team and to root for their team and, to say their team's going to win, even if they believe it or don't believe it. Atlanta Hawks fans are already out to a hot start on the first day before this series gets going, man. What is going on in Atlanta Hawks Twitter world where you're talking about beating the Sixers team in 5, or even if they have Joel Embiid, they can still beat this Sixers team? Are you joking, dude? Like, I get like rooting for your team and like whether you believe it or you're just saying it as a hopeful fan, but to come out and say like, there's a page on Hawks Twitter earlier that I screenshotted that talks about how without Joel Embiid, they'll beat him in 5. In the comments, they're calling Simmons a bum who has no offensive game and all this shit. Dude, you just beat the New York Knicks. You want to pump the brakes a little bit? Oh, it's all this false bravado because in their minds, Joel Embiid isn't healthy and he's not going to play. And the second he steps onto that floor, they're going to be shitting their pants because they have no shot at beating the Sixers with Joel Embiid on the floor. And that's my take on the Atlanta Hawks fans. And I just think it's going to be a very interesting series, especially with the way Trae Young has kind of taken this heel. You're a wrestling guy, Mark.
Hell yeah.
He's kind of taken this, this heel plot, especially against the Knicks, and I think he's going to continue that in Philly because a full packed Wells Fargo Center is going to let him hear it as well. And if he, let's say he just gets going at one point, he's going to let him hear it back, and then that villain, that Trae Young heel, is going to come out to play again. So it's definitely going to be interesting. But I say that the Sixers take it either way because I'm just not going to be, I'm going to be real. That's why I'm saying 7, but I'm not going to be overly negative just because Joel Embiid's injury. Because while the Hawks are a good team, think they are great offense, very good offensively, not great, but they're very good offensively. They have the same record as the Sixers since firing Lloyd Pierce for Nate McMillan and bringing up Nate McMillan. Excuse me. I believe they're 31-12 since March 1st or whatever like that. I think they're underrated, but they're not the 76ers. And I will just say that the Sixers defensively, the Sixers offensively, with or without Joel Embiid, is a different monster than the fake New York Knicks the number 4 seed.
Gun to my head, I'd say Sixers and 7 probably. I mean, it's such unknown.
I think
But
game one's going to be very telling, in my opinion, if he doesn't play.
For
Like
sure.
you're going to see, like even if you're going to see what issues are coming up with him out, or you're going to see that the Sixers are just a better team than the Hawks, even without him. I don't think it's anywhere in between. Is that stupid of me to say?
No, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think you're correct in that, and I don't think we'll be hearing Trey is balding chants at the
I don't
Wells
think
Fargo
anyone's going to
Center.
be handing out flyers tonight.
Yeah. I think it'll just be a similar chant to what we were hearing at the end of the game, directed at Russell Westbrook. I think it'll be. I think
this is a children-friendly show.
Yeah, I think one word before Trey Young sounds pretty good in the chant to me. But I just also want to say I think it's going to go 7, probably, gun to my head. I think the Sixers win. I cannot be held responsible to any of the things I tweet about Trey Young. I will get canceled during this series. He gets under my skin like no athlete I've seen in a long time, and I don't know what that is. Wow. I don't know why, because it hasn't even been against the Sixers really. I hate the Knicks, and I was watching that series like, what an asshole. I just can't stand him, and watching him against the Sixers is going to, like, I am going to be a different type of Sixers fan than I usually am. Like, I think that I'm pretty reasoned generally about the Sixers, but I don't know if I'll be very reasoned during the series.
Absolutely. So, guys, go give my man Mark a follow on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. _ and give his podcast here at the Paint of Lines a follow on Twitter at the Tough Cover Pod. Mark has been a very busy man today on going on Marks and Reese for a little bit, and let's try to get Caroline down to game 2.
Yeah, that's the goal. We can't make it to game 1. We got a christening on game 1.
By the way, they're 100% right. No Phillies game on Friday night. You are not.
Yeah. I might have to go. I might have to go down by myself or something. Like, leave her at home. Go down by myself.
Go with some friends or something. You are not putting the streak at risk. For the damn Phillies in early June. Okay, I'm forbidding that from happening. But for myself, for Mark, for the Paint of Lines, and for DSM Media, have a good night and go Sixers.